Hi, my name is Dane Powell, and this is my final project for ARC532. Power dynamics are found in every aspect of our lives. This is not a negative, but a reality of human interaction. Architectural theory explores how architecture organizes power relationships within society. The built environment is never neutral. Circulations, boundaries, visibility, and access all combine to shape how people interact with buildings, cities, and each other. This idea reminded me from a scene from the 1979 movie Breaking Away, where the protagonist's father talks about cutting the limestone for the buildings at Indiana University. He says, "I was proud of my work, and the buildings went up. When they were finished, the damnedest thing happened. It was like the buildings were too good for us." Architecture has power, the power to exclude or the power to include. Architecture is never neutral. It shapes relationships of access, identity, and belonging. On the other end of the spectrum, you have informal cities like Lagos, where the needs of the individual and the community grow and evolve naturally rather than through centralized control. Koolhaas wrote, "Lagos is not catching up with us, rather we may be catching up with Lagos." While few people, if any, would choose to live in a city given the option, excuse me, Koolhaas's statement indicates that the traditional Western model of building for the building's sake must be revisited to allow for and encourage self-organizing and community-rooted solutions to the needs of the city. The goal is somewhere in the middle, by taking the best of planning and organization and merging that with community engagement and adapting buildings and cities to develop in harmony with local needs and resources. A perfect example of this hybrid can be seen in the Quinta Monroe housing complex in Chile by Alejandro Aravena of Elemental. Architecture theory is not about how we design buildings, but how we navigate the relationships between people, space, movement, and society. In this presentation, I'll compare my studio project from this semester with the work of Rem Koolhaas to explore how theory shifted my understanding of architecture from design of static objects to the organization of systems and relationships, and show that an architect does not need to abandon creative forms in lieu of programming, but that they can work together. The first step in this approach is to approach the project from a perspective of phenomenology and begin by considering the sensory experience, atmosphere, and how the project will be perceived by the occupant. Giuliani Palassima said that architecture is the art of reconciliation between ourselves and the world. Imagining the experience formed out of the world of space and matter is the first step, but taking that sensory response and integrating it into a social and functional application is where the work of Rem Koolhaas comes in. Just for a note, this image is from the Salk Institute in San Diego, and just a really great example of how a building can evoke the phenomenological response in the people experiencing it. Koolhaas moves beyond traditional form and phenomenological ideas and approaches design not as isolated sensory objects, but as part of urban systems and social nodes that live within integrated networks. Take, for instance, the Seattle Central Library. It is a sensory, phenomenological experience while integrating into the urban fabric and encouraging relationships flows over just a simple isolated building. Again, Koolhaas does not shy away from unique forms, but is purposeful in designing to create an interactive, functional space that connects with the wider community. In the CCTV headquarters, circulation and programming create the form for the architecture, rather than separating function into isolated towers or floors. The building operates as a continuous loop, an interconnected system. Koolhaas sees programmatic instability as the driver of architecture. This means that architecture should be flexible and open to changing requirements. Form emerges from the relationship. This is where my studio project will take inspiration from Koolhaas. My project, Ocean Academy, began as a response to site conditions and program requirements, but through this course I began to reinterpret it differently. Rather than designing the building as a series of closed classrooms, my pedagogy and my programming allowed for open spaces with modular furniture that could be changed as the requirements of the space changed. Interior walls were intentionally limited to the bare minimum to allow for programmatic flexibility. The curved form was a direct design decision to protect the inner courtyard from the urban traffic on the west side of the lot, creating a protected environment for students. The building was conceived as a response to the neighborhood and to the programming requirements. Circulation became especially important in my thinking. The organization of movement through the building structures how the students interact with the space and with each other. The program is layered vertically to create layers between learning environments, shared spaces, and community functions. The design is a response to the organization of systems rather than form for form's sake. I hope that my design reflects a similar understanding of architecture as Rem Koolhaas and creates a network of relationships. Both projects reject the idea of architecture as a single static object. In Koolhaas's work, architecture operates as an urban infrastructure shaped by circulation and complexity. In my project, architecture becomes an educational infrastructure, organizing movement, interaction, and learning. What connects the two is the idea that architecture is not simply designed as form, but is organized as a system with relationships. What appears as form is actually the result of a deeper relationship between movement, program, environment, and human interaction. Again, architecture is never static. It is a system of connections and stakeholders that change and evolve over time. Architectural theory is less about getting an exact answer to a question than critically evaluating the world, the sensory experience, the relationships, the social fabric, and the accessibility for all those who experience that built environment. Thank you very much.